January 29th, 2026 started like any other earnings day, until one announcement changed lives across a Manhattan neighborhood. Foot Locker, an iconic name in sneakers and streetwear, told investors it would move its global headquarters from New York City to St. Petersburg, Florida, effective September 1st. The fallout was immediate. 873 corporate roles eliminated, another 1,200 positions shifted to Florida, and hundreds of families suddenly staring at impossible choices. This wasn't a bankrupt company making cuts. Foot Locker is profitable, steeped in culture, and deeply tied to New York's identity. That's what made the exit so painful and so symbolic. At City Hall, Mayor Zohran Mamdani reacted with fury. He labeled the decision corporate extortion, saying the company had built its success on New York's culture and workforce and was now abandoning both for tax savings and cheaper offices. He vowed to push state legislation that would hit companies leaving New York with penalties and require them to pay workers more generous severance. The outcry was loud and political, but beneath the rhetoric lies a more complicated calculus. Are New York's taxes, rents, and regulations protecting workers or pushing their jobs out the door? To grasp the stakes, you need to see what Foot Locker meant to the city. The company, founded in 1974 in California, moved its global headquarters to New York in 1989, a strategic choice. New York is more than an address for retail brands. It's a cultural engine. Sneakers, sports, music, and urban fashion intersect in the city in a way that amplifies brands. Foot Locker's office at 330 West 34th Street, 7 floors and nearly 293,000 square feet across from Madison Square Garden, wasn't just a workplace. It was a cultural nerve center where product drops, marketing campaigns, and partnerships that shaped youth culture were born. By 2024, Foot Locker ran 2,847 stores worldwide and brought in roughly $8.2 billion in revenue, with North America representing about 63% of sales. The Manhattan headquarters employed 273 professionals, buyers, marketers, tech specialists, logistics coordinators, earning an average salary around $97,000. These were stable careers, supporting households, lenders, restaurants, and small vendors nearby. The daily rhythm of those employees kept delis busy, coffee lines long, and dry cleaners humming. The company's annual holiday party at Pier 60 drew 1,200 attendees and supported caterers and event staff throughout the city. Culturally, Foot Locker did more than pay wages. It turned sneaker releases into urban events, collaborated with New York designers, sponsored youth basketball leagues across the 5 boroughs, and donated $3.7 million to city schools between 2018 and 2024. Foot Locker's presence reinforced New York's claim as a global tastemaker in sportswear and street style. So when CEO Mary Dillon announced the headquarters move on that January earnings call, the language was corporate: operational efficiency, cost optimization, strategic alignment for future growth. Employees learned through company-wide emails and quickly scheduled meetings. The practical terms were bleak. 873 positions cut by September 1st, 1,200 roles offered relocation packages to St. Petersburg. The relocation assistance, $12,000 per family, far short of the real moving average of about $32,000. For many, the offer was a lifeline that didn't cover the gap. Mayor Mamdani's reaction the next day was visceral. Foot Locker built its empire on New York workers and New York culture, he said, promising to press for bills that would require departing companies to pay a year's salary to terminated employees and reimburse the city for incentives previously granted. City council leaders said the company had benefited from tax breaks and infrastructure investments. They called the timing a betrayal. But the anger is only one side of the ledger. The other is arithmetic, and that arithmetic explains why many companies are rethinking New York as a headquarters. First, taxes. New York's combined state and city corporate tax rate sits near 13.5%. Florida's corporate rate is 5.5%, with no city tax. For a company generating hundreds of millions in profit, that differential adds up quickly, tens of millions annually and hundreds of millions over a decade. And executives feel it personally. New York's top marginal income taxes, state plus city, push individual rates to around 14.78% before federal taxes. Florida has no state income tax. For senior managers and executives earning hundreds of thousands or millions, relocating is an immediate take-home pay gain. Second, office costs. Manhattan's Class A space averaged roughly $92 per square foot in late 2025. St. Petersburg's comparable rates hovered near $37. Foot Locker's Manhattan lease cost about $27 million annually. Similar space in Florida would be closer to $10.8 million, a difference of about $16.2 million a year. Over a 10-year lease, the savings are enormous. Add higher maintenance, property pass-throughs, and utilities in Manhattan, and the gap widens. Third, regulations and compliance. New York's employment rules, expanded family leave, mandatory sick leave, predictive scheduling protections, commuter benefit mandates, carry real costs in benefits, administrative overhead, and legal risk. Companies report larger HR and legal teams, more litigation exposure, and higher settlement averages in New York than in lower regulation states. For many corporate leaders, the regulatory burden feels like friction on growth and margins. Fourth, quality of life and recruiting. Employee surveys cited by the company and local reporting showed many staffers worried most about cost of living, rent, childcare, commuting, then safety and family logistics. Manhattan median rents climbed past $4,000 for a one-bedroom by late 2025. St. Petersburg averages were much lower. Remote work normalized during the pandemic, proving that many corporate functions could be performed out of costly coastal hubs without losing output. With that precedent, the premium of a New York headquarters becomes harder to defend. Foot Locker didn't invent this trend. Since 2020, multiple corporations, from finance to consulting to retail, have moved operations or headquarters out of New York. Florida has added dozens of headquarters. Texas and Tennessee have been popular too. Each departure amplifies vacancy rates, pushes down property values, and cuts tax revenue for city coffers already stressed by deficits. The math for New York isn't limited to direct job losses. Historical relocation data suggests only about 18 to 23% of employees offered relocation actually move. For Foot Locker, that could translate to roughly 270 staffers relocating, while about 930 jobs vanish from the city. Those disappearances affect nearby businesses, generate reduced sales taxes, and erode payroll withholdings. Economists estimate multiplier effects of roughly 2.1 additional jobs lost for every corporate job gone, so the city could face thousands more secondary job losses in restaurants, retail, cleaning services, and local vendors. The human stories are what make the statistics unbearable. A merchandising director with 17 years at the company, earning 6 figures and rooted in Queens, with kids in school and a spouse working locally, faces the impossible math of moving, selling a home in a soft market, paying relocation costs far exceeding the $12,000 assistance, and risking family disruption. A single mother in digital marketing with caregiving networks anchored locally weighs isolation in Florida against unemployment in New York's competitive market, where comparable roles often pay far less. Severance packages do offer temporary relief, weeks or months of pay, but rarely solve long-term displacement. Retraining programs exist, but they take months while bills come due immediately. For many affected workers, prime earning years, mortgages, kids, aging parents, there is little room to absorb extended joblessness. Politically, Mayor Mamdani's proposed legislation to force exit fees and heavier severance met immediate pushback. Business groups called it unconstitutional and warned it would accelerate exits. Opponents argue the right fix is making New York more competitive, tax reform, regulatory streamlining, incentives, rather than punitive measures that could deter investment further. The deeper question this episode raises is elemental. Can a city maintain progressive labor protections, high tax rates, and robust public services without pricing out the firms that employ middle-class workers? Or do those policies, however well-intended, force an economic realignment where only ultra-high-value firms and ultra-wealthy residents can thrive? By autumn 2026, the physical and economic void will be undeniable. 293,000 square feet of Manhattan office space dark, hundreds of workers jobless or forced to relocate, and dependent small businesses facing steep revenue declines. If that pattern repeats, neighborhoods will hollow out and the tax base will shrink, making it harder to fund the very services and protections meant to help workers in the first place. Foot Locker's move is a single headline with cascading consequences. It is a story about taxes and leases, yes, but more so about the fragile balance between policy and practical economics, between cultural identity and corporate spreadsheets. For every family forced to choose between stability and survival, the city must confront a simple, stark question. Do our rules protect people or the economic space in which those people work? That answer will be written not in press conferences or in slogans, but in job listings, closed storefronts, and the choices of families deciding whether to stay or go. One headquarters leaves at a time. One paycheck disappears at a time, and with each exit, the experiment of building a progressive high-cost city grows riskier for the middle class that once defined it.